and welcome to the Daily Space Weather. I'm your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, coming at you from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. We would attract your attention to the lower right, the southwestern limb. You may see a massive radio emission happening down there. Was it accompanied by a coronal mass ejection? We'll talk about it, and lots more here on today's Daily Space Weather video. What we're looking at here are three different wavelengths from the SDO. They may not be the normal wavelengths that you're used to, and if you are used to those wavelengths, they may be in colors that you're not used to. There's that massive radio burst coming from the southwestern limb. A whole bunch of plasma just kind of stood up, and that has a tendency to emit radiation in the realm of the radio frequencies. So you may have seen an alert about that. Again, we'll talk about whether or not it was accompanied by a coronal mass ejection later in the video. That data is from yesterday plus today. The largest solar flare came from this small sunspot group up here. Also, interestingly enough, we have another sunspot that just rose right up here. So another large sunspot group just rose. We do still have a high probability of large solar flares. So it's another exciting day for space weather here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Let's take a look at sunspots next. Here's yesterday plus today in SDO continuum. And a little bit of growth of this sunspot that produced the M-class flare earlier this morning. Besides that, not a lot of changes happening as far as sunspots. Here's your SDO magnetogram. And let's take a brief moment to see what's going on planet Earth in terms of volcanic eruptions. So we cover it daily because of the demand from viewers just like you. So these are the volcanoes that are erupting. Karengatang now showing up on the list once again as it explodes. It's producing a 7,000-foot plume of volcanic ash at the moment. Mount Ibu, 8,000-foot ash plume there as it explodes. Flight level 080. 7,000-foot ash plume from Luatolo as well. 7,000-foot ash plume. Flight level 070. Semeru, flight level 150. As the East Javan volcano explodes. 15,000-foot ash plume. 7,000-foot ash plume from Dakono. 14,000-foot ash plume from Ravenador. Sabancaya exploding. Flight level 240. And let's take a moment to identify where these videos come from. They are brought to you at massive personal risk and expense from Smash staff and also from Smash team members. That is, namely the silver, the gold, and the gold annual paid up subscriptions. For additional content, become a member of the Smash team, especially at the silver or gold level. The best value is the gold annual paid up subscription. It's like getting 4 months of a gold membership for free, as it includes complimentary merch. So thanks to our gold and silver Smash team members for increasing the probability these videos will continue to exist, remain publicly visible, and free for all to view. Smashomash.com/Smash team is our own custom subscription services site launched in October of 2021. They're also brought to you in part by our affiliates/sponsors, so please visit those links as well. Do your shopping at Hemp Lucid via our link, which you can find below this video in the description, as well as on the homepage at smashomash.com. So pick up your CBDs via our link. If you're just on hemplucid.com, use the promo code SMASHOMASH to save 10% on your checkout. You can find your CBDs, your tinctures and so on, your mushroom gummies, immune stacks, body balms, all sorts of great products there on the Hemp Lucid site, so check those out. You can also find some information about those products in our product reviews playlist on the YouTube channel. Once again, enter the promo code SMASHOMASH to save 10% on your checkout, or just shop via our link, conveniently located below this video and on the homepage at smashomash.com. Today's featured product is insecticide on the Amazon shop. We put up some more idea lists up there on the Amazon shop, so check that out. Amazon.com/shop/SmashoMash and save 20% off of everything in the Redbubble shop. Have you ever heard of Operation Paperclip? Didn't you know that NASA was funded by actual Nazis? When are you going to stop believing their lies? Didn't you know that the Nazis of World War II had incentive to convince people that Earth is shaped like a sphere and not a croissant? What are you, some kind of an idiot? What, next thing you know, you're gonna get, why don't you get a booster? Get a booster since you don't believe in chemtrails. When will you stop believing NASA's lies about Earth being shaped like an oblate spheroid? These lies are pathetic, so we've included a nice informational image for you there of Croissant Earth. Yeah, the Croissant Earth Society. When will you stop believing NASA's lies? And again, save 20% site-wide. Links below the video to the Redbubble shop, as well as on the homepage there also. The Smasho merch featured product is, of course, the Croissant Earth Society. Now today I'm wearing something that will not be mentioned because, well, these videos are designed for YouTube. So, anyway, last but not least, these videos are brought to you at massive personal risk and expense by Smash Staff and I. So visit the homepage, help us out with clicks, etc. Thanks to everybody who has. Smashomash.com, and welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. There's the Hemp Lucid link. There's the Amazon link. There's the link to the YouTube channel, the Twitter, the Instagram, Twitch, Patreon, PayPal, a permanent invite link to the Discord chat, and so forth. Smashomash.com. We launched it back in February of 2019. And let's get to global seismicity. So it's been pretty seismically calm here over the past 24 hours. There's a convenient 90-day bar graph for you. And no major quakes over the past 24. The most quakes occurred in the southwestern Pacific. So let's just scroll up the list here. If we miss anything, let us know in the comments. We will mention quakes that are of a 5 magnitude or greater. So the first one to cite would be this 5.4 at the Solomon Islands. That was at 22:52 Universal Time yesterday evening. It was kind of deep also at 76.5 kilometers estimated depth. Also, the Loyalty Islands saw a 5.0 early this morning at 4:31 Universal Time. And a little under an hour later, Guam had a 5.2. And those are all the quakes that we'll cover. Let's get back to space. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux is back up to 164 solar flux units. And let's show some additional imagery here. Here is 335 angstroms from SDO. Once again, we do have a new large sunspot that just rose up here in the northeast. There was one M-class flare in the past 24 hours that came from this new sunspot group right here. A great reminder that you don't need to see a large sunspot to see a decent solar flare. That was an M. Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Again, the radio flux now at 164 solar flux units. There is the one-year graph to contextualize the radio flux. It's represented by this black line, and it has been climbing steadily since mid-April. The red line below it is a sunspot number, and let's take a look at the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard next. And there is some geomagnetic unrest / geomagnetic storm conditions forecasted for tonight. So there could be some minor auroral activity here. We're not expecting anything major. It is from a coronal hole high-speed stream, so those can be duds or they can be quite significant. So we will keep you posted. And By the way, don't forget to sign up for email alerts at smashomash.com/smashteam. Space weather alerts and tsunami alerts and so forth even go out to the bronze level, which will cost you $0 per month. Once again, thanks to the silver and gold level Smash Team members. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from space for the past 4 hours. And if you're worried about Earth's poles flipping, the magnetic poles that is, well, I would note this data, how it looks just fine to me. The last 4 hours of magnetohydrodynamic pressure here modeled by the space weather modeling framework. No indication the poles are flipping, so here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. And guess what? Also no indication that Earth's magnetic poles are flipping. Do you see them turning into quadrupoles or octopoles or hexapoles? No, I certainly don't either, because it's simply not happening. The pole flip. Lots of people are spooked by the pole flip because of confident-sounding charlatans who make millions of dollars on YouTube per year straight up lying to their viewers. Here's some truth for our viewers. The last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. Looking pretty calm here, geomagnetically speaking. Speaking of geomagnetically speaking, the KP index is at 2. The planetary K index is an average of global geomagnetism, and here is the real-time solar wind data. Looking pretty weak here. It's solar wind density of 2.72 protons per cubic centimeter, solar wind velocity 384 kilometers per second. And the BTBZ, which is this top pane, that's the measurement of the magnetic field. Total field is 4 nanotesla, and we do have a BZ of -1. That's pretty weak in terms of the total field, and not likely to induce a lot of current with that -1 BZ. Continuing right along to look at the GOES magnetometers. The GOES magnetometers are in a slightly tighter range here. For the past 24, we're seeing kind of higher lows and lower highs there. Next, we'll look at the heliospheric current sheet. Super important set of data right here. And as we've been saying for the last few days, keep an eye on this green blob right here. Why? Because it's ready to snap toward the equator. And when it does, you can expect to see a precipitous uptick in solar activity. That coronal hole there has been trying to leave the North Pole throughout solar cycle 25, and it's still not doing so. There's the latest image. When that thing migrates, solar maximum is right around the corner. Here's our line of sight field plot. And as you can see here, Earth is moving right toward the middle of the North Pole-oriented current sheet depicted here in green. South Pole current sheet depicted over there on the opposite side in red. Here the solar B field is depicted in blue. North field in green, south field in red. And here's our line of sight coronal hole plot. And let's bring up the latest image and look at the SDO animation for coronal holes. Our favorite wavelength for that is indeed 211 angstroms. So let's show yesterday plus today of that. There is the 211 angstroms wavelength. You can see some quite cavernous coronal holes there. Also, this filament starting to look quite unstable. It is a huge filament, and it's just moving past the Earth strike zone. If it does eject at this moment, it's got a fairly high likelihood that it will end up being an earthly directed coronal mass ejection, so fingers crossed on that one. And let's get back to our regularly scheduled data. Here is the sunspot scenario. Oh, okay, so this sunspot group over here doesn't have a name yet. This group that produced the M-class flare, that'll be 3324 will be the name of that one. And then this new group rising up here in the northeast, that'll be 3325, I suspect. And let's get back to looking at sunspots here. Here's the SDO continuum for yesterday plus today. Again, 2 new named groups will appear today. This one here. And there's also one that just rose up here. So we may see a net drop in the sunspot number with a bunch of large sunspot groups setting there in the west. However, again, 2 new named sunspot groups will show up today. And next we'll talk about energetic particles and solar flares. The proton flux remains flatlined. No solar energetic particle events. And there is the GOES X-ray flux. We put up the 1-day graph here. We normally show the 3-day. The peak flux of this M-class flare was an M1.53. Peak flux was at 2:40 Universal Time this morning. Again, it did come from the northern hemisphere. And let's cut back to that. By the way, the 94 angstroms also shows this incredible radio burst down here in the southwestern limb. You'll see a huge amount of plasma just hanging out there for an extended period of time. That is pretty epic. This data depicts yesterday plus today, and let's zoom in a little bit here on the eastern limb to show some extraordinary detail there. Wait for it. And there it is. That is a lot of ionized iron hanging out at the southwestern limb. We'll let it play through one more time. That is some good stuff. Anyway, we encourage our viewers to look up. And before we talk about coronal mass ejections and so forth, here is a star chart for what's going on over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. If you want to create your own, skyandtelescope.org is the website we're using. Just put in your location, and you can have your own star chart depicting the horizon where you're located. Here's your solar system forecast. This is where things are located today. Shout out to all those heavenly bodies viewing the videos. Here's where things will be in a week on June 9th. Next, we'll look at coronagraphs. And you may be concerned about that radio burst that we showed you from the southwestern limb producing a coronal mass ejection. Well, I don't think it did. There are 104 frames from yesterday. Let me just cut back to that for a brief moment here. So this radio burst, the energetic part of it happened right around 1500 Universal Time yesterday. If there was a coronal mass ejection from that one, it was indeed minor. A little bit of ejecta there, but not much. Here are an additional 26 frames from today. Great example of a huge radio burst that did not yield a significant coronal mass ejection. So here's Soho Lasco C2 and C3 just to corroborate what I just said. No major CMEs there. We'll also show Stereo A plus Soho Lasco C3. Stereo A located here on the left. Please note the time and date stamps. Those are not synced images. Basically no coronal mass ejection there despite that huge radio burst. So what happens, folks, is the plasma, it gets suspended out there by magnetic fields and it emits radio energy, and it's one of the many features that we monitor when we are expecting coronal mass ejections. So typically when you see a huge radio burst like that, it's very common to see a coronal mass ejection associated with it. This time, Not happening. By the way, let's go back to the X-ray flux just for a minute here. I wanted to show some imagery in 131 angstroms. So there is yesterday plus today in 131 from the SDO. And again, that M-class flare came from this small new sunspot group right here. And there's that M-class flare. Next, we'll talk filaments, and there are certainly some interesting filaments indeed. So check out the size of this one. This filament right here in the southern central longitude solar disk there, that is one of the bigger ones that we've ever covered on the channel. It has been looking increasingly unstable in the past 24 hours. You can see it starting to wave around there. So, again, fingers crossed for a CME from that one. That could produce some aurorae at mid-latitudes if it does end up striking Earth's magnetosphere. If you want to name filaments, follow us over on Twitter and follow the hashtag #NameThatFilament. Twitter, the pathetically broken, quote, social media and, quote, platform that people think free speech has been restored on. Now, here on the channel, we are actual free speech purists, not free speech phonies, since we encourage all legal speech. In other words, if I owned a social media corporation, I wouldn't shadow ban anybody. I wouldn't deboost the content. I would allow the invisible hand of the market to control who sees what on their feed. So here's yesterday plus today in SDO 304 angstroms. Some spectacular imagery of this filament. Also, you can see how differently that radio burst from the southwest looks, in that you can barely even see it in ionized helium. The helium didn't like that radio burst as much as the ionized iron did. A great example of how different chemical species react completely differently in the sun's atmosphere, known as the solar corona. Next, we'll look at the last couple of hours here in the GOES SUVI, 304 angstroms wavelength. That's the past 2.5 hours there from the GOES SUVI. Now the GOES 18 is the active spacecraft. And we will be monitoring this filament. Also, this filament up here is quite huge. Likelihood of large solar flares remains in place, and likelihood of coronal mass ejections remains at nearly 100%. That brings us to our bonus features segment, starting with satellite charging hazards. We show it daily on the channel because, well, some people are going to be convinced that Kim Jong-un or Putin or Xi Jinping are causing satellite interference. It's actually caused by electrons. In this case, there are some minor surface charging hazards there in the Eastern Pacific. Those surface charging hazards caused by low-energy electrons building up on the surfaces of satellites. So a little bit of satellite drag there, no big deal, no major charging hazards. Here is the GOES electron flux. It's measured using radiography from geosynchronous orbits. The geosynchronous orbits of the GOES 16 and GOES 18. If you're not familiar with the data set there, the N's and M's, they stand for noon and midnight local time for the satellites. The GOES electron flux here in a low to moderate range. There's the 1-year graph to put it in context. The greater than 2 mega electron volt electron fluence. Here's a forecast model. NOAA expecting flat levels. I would expect slightly lower levels when we do see the onset of that coronal hole high-speed stream. And fingers crossed for the coronal hole high-speed stream to be strong and exciting because, well, space weather's been boring lately. Some great imagery of the sun, but not very much exciting stuff happening on the Earth side of things. We'll also show the F layer of the ionosphere, which is, by the way, where that radiography measurement is happening, from tens of thousands of miles higher in orbit. The GOES 16 and GOES 18 measure the electron flux down here at the F layer of the ionosphere, which is at about 300 kilometers of altitude. Here's the vibrational frequency in megahertz of said F layer. We are seeing some substantial low-frequency anomalies on the map. If you're not familiar with the data, don't worry. We're going to let it play through and then show the anomalygram. So there's the anomalygram. That's anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. And you can see quite a bit of low-frequency anomalies here around Central Asia. Also around the West Pacific, around Hawaii, the Central Pacific, Central Indian Ocean, Central Africa, Central Atlantic Ocean. Low-frequency anomalies there showing up in the ionosphere. There's a latest image. That's 11 o'clock Universal Time ionogram at 11 o'clock Universal Time anomalygram. We also like to show the total electron content forecast. It depicts the free electrons to about 12,500 miles of altitude, which is approximately where your GPS satellite is located. And here is the total electron content forecast. Those red areas are the most likely places to see GPS errors. And coronal hole high-speed wind streams can indeed increase GPS errors. If you have the possibility of major GPS errors and you're trying to navigate, try turning on Wi-Fi location accuracy. That works if there are Wi-Fi hotspots around where you are navigating, as IP addresses have known physical locations. Here's the total electron content anomaly from the 10-day average over North America. We did raise the possibility that there would be a large earthquake by June 3rd. So through June 3rd, I guess there's an earthquake watch for Central America, the Caribbean, and southern Mexico. Again, that's the total electron content for North America. It is depicting the anomaly from the 10-day average. High electron count anomalies shown in red, low electron count anomalies shown in blue. We'll close out the space weather section of the video as we do on the regs with a full resolution image in SDO continuum as well as colorized magnetogram. Here's that new sunspot I mentioned. And it looks like there are actually more than one new group. Let's try that again. I'm going to zoom in there instead. So here is the rock back. So at least two new sunspot groups just rose there. This one here, that is a sunspot, and that right there, I can tell that is a sunspot as well. I can see a dark umbra. Here's the full disk rock back. We do have some significant magnetic complexity with this sunspot group. It is beta gamma delta class. These groups over here, at least beta gamma class. That one there looks beta gamma delta class, and that's beta gamma delta class. So don't be surprised to see a major flare. This is certainly capable of producing an X-class flare down here in the southwestern limb. That would be my favorite place to see a large flare today. Right there. So some of that plasma might still be hanging out down there, folks. The plasma that we showed in that massive radio burst. Yeah. Oh, this sunspot group also. This one is also beta gamma delta class. This one here looks like it's just, is it just alpha class? Barely beta gamma class. So anyway, there's the full disk rock back. And let's get to meteorology. We're starting out with global pressure. Yeah, we're looking at the mean sea level pressure, and the lowest pressure in the world here is off the coast of Argentina there. That is in the South Pacific. And the lowest pressure on Earth right now is about 944 hectopascals. Of course, the Southern Ocean, when in doubt, if there's no major storms, the Southern Ocean is typically the spot with the lowest pressure, as that water just circles Antarctica. This imagery depicts mean sea level pressure in color shading, and then it depicts wind speeds in the animations. So here's a great example of a high pressure zone. Those rotate counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere. They are essentially like a downward force. They represent more massive air. A low pressure would be an upward force, like a lifting up of the atmosphere. This would be an anticyclone or a high pressure zone. Anyway, let's get to our regular meteorology stuff. Here are the surface winds of the eastern world. And fun fact, if you think the planet is overpopulated, then how do we fit 3 billion people in such a small area? Aren't there plenty of natural resources for like 10, 20 billion people on the planet? Let us know in the comments what you think. Or let us know if you are with the anti-humanist insane agenda who thinks that there are too many people on the planet because you don't understand science. Here are the jet streams of the eastern world. Here are the jet streams of the west. We've still got incoherent jet streams over the U.S., folks. Incoherent jet streams over the U.S. Surface winds are looking like this. A strong low continues to occupy the northern Atlantic there. Surface winds of the central world here, and here are the jet streams. If you had to pick only one weather variable to forecast global weather patterns, I would recommend the jet streams. Anyway, here's a great satellite map for you. This is the past 4 hours. Let me just press refresh there to make sure that we have the latest data. Give that a minute to spool up. Great imagery of that low as the sun rises over the North Atlantic. See that counterclockwise rotating northern hemisphere low pressure zone in between the Azores and Nova Scotia. So that's your satellite view. Windy.com's got a great mobile app as well. Check that out if you haven't. Here is clouds and fog depicted over the Americas. That is our NASA GOES interactive weather satellite map. 3.9 micrometers infrared radiation. Next, weather warnings, and we've got a lot of air quality alerts as we've got unseasonably warm temperatures and low air quality. So most of that gray is either fog or air quality alerts. The green is mostly flooding and hydrologic outlook. If your location is lit, head to weather.gov and click your location. And if your YouTube feed is lit, hopefully it's not full of nonsense. Clean out your YouTube subscriptions, folks, and unsubscribe from all the channels who are posting a bunch of crap on the platform. Here come some forecasts. Since we've got unseasonably hot temperatures in Pennsylvania today, we're showing the temperature anomaly in degrees Celsius. That's a GFS 72-hour temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. And we'll have some rapid swings from unseasonably warm to unseasonably cold temperatures in the mid-Atlantic states. Here's your pressure and precipitation forecast based on the same GFS 72-hour model. It's your 3-day pressure and precipitation forecast. Strong storms continuing to pummel northern Texas, the Amarillo-Lubbock area, getting kaplastered once again. Some strong storms on their way back. And since we've got a bunch of flooding in the forecast, let's take a look at the total accumulated precipitation forecast on the GFS 72-hour model. And you can see they're forecasting now like 5 inches of rain in portions of Texas and Oklahoma. Also Montana expecting to see about 4 inches there. Again, that's your 72-hour GFS total accumulated precipitation forecast in inches. How about lightning? That's what's been striking over the past about 10 hours. And let's check current terrestrial strikes, courtesy of lightningmaps.org, powered by Blitzachtung.org. Go ahead, folks, say it aloud. German, it's the best language to yell curse words. Blitzachtung.org. Ich möchte ein Franziskaner Hefeweiß. Lots of lightning here north of the Mediterranean once again. Check it out. Lots of activity there. A lot of strikes happening there around the Mediterranean in general. As far as the U.S. goes, it's like some terrestrial strike there south of Lake Superior on the Upper Peninsula. Some minor thunder shower activity happening up there. Next time you hear thunder, I highly recommend lightningmaps.org. Convince the natives that you're Zeus or Thor or something, or perhaps impersonate a horror movie villain by forecasting thunder. U.S. Doppler radars next. This is radar.weather.gov, by the way. There's a lower 48 view. Here is clouds and fog over the lower 48. And we will close out the video with water vapor. After our recap, that is. So here's a recap. Doppler radar, which shows vertical motion in the air column from ground-based Doppler radar systems. Space-based systems showing infrared radiation at 3.9 micrometers. And another space-based system showing 6.19 micrometers, the water vapor map. So again, we've got incoherent jet streams. That will be the situation going forward. Look for possible more space weather videos coming today, especially if we see some other events happening, which it's only a matter of time, folks. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Anyway, we'll see you soon, and thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. I'm going back to the bunker, so we'll see you later, and good luck with whatever depth your bunker might be. Whoa.